Dwayne joining us?
He is not gonna be here tonight, he had to catch up on his homework on his vacation, so.
It is 6:30, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thank you everybody for coming, I appreciate you finding the time. I guess we've got minutes of the last two meetings to review and hopefully approve here first thing off the bat. Dwayne, when I asked he was here, I guess had a number of revisions that he wanted to submit or had thoughts or ideas to share.
So the minutes are redlined with corrections.
Starting with the January 13th meeting, do we have any additional comments we would like to make? If not, I would be looking for a motion.
Make a motion to approve the January 13th minutes as revised.
We have a motion to approve, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll take care of the January 13th meeting minutes. As for our last meeting on February 10th, does anybody else have any additions or corrections for that meeting? If not, I'll look for a motion on those as well.
I'll make that motion.
Got a motion to approve the February 10th minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That would take care of the February 10th minutes. Next item on the agenda this evening, public hearing for the Quick Trip conditional use permit. Dan, do you have anything to start us off?
Well, you've got information that we took a look at our last meeting in your packet, and since then, we've had a lot of work done at staff level to try and, get some answers on different things. So in your package, you've got a number of items, including, you know, the photometrics and, isometric candle plans and things like that, lighting. We did talk to the county engineer too, and I think we've got his, concerns allayed. So, I guess tonight what we're gonna do is, you know, have the public hearing so that if anyone from the public wants to, I guess to start off with folks who, were at the last meeting, you know, we have a project where Quick Trip is looking at, demolishing their old structure on their, property, and they're looking at, basically making it into a larger truck parking area. So the board at their previous meeting had discussed, some of the safety improvements they felt were appropriate, you know, crosswalks and things of that nature, as well as drainage. You've got the engineer's report in there, and as I said, I think most of those items have, we've been satisfied with that. One item that, our city attorney did bring to my attention is there's some easements. We need to have some new language updated for that, Melanie. Maybe you could just talk about that real quick.
Sure. They provided us with a copy of the 2005 easement. There was an error in the legal description in that. It sounds like they are going to have the new easement agreement drafted and signed among the properties. So I don't anticipate that. I would recommend that being a condition of approval, but they said that they would probably have that to us by the end of the week. So.
Do you know what the error is on?
It was taken from a bigger, legal description, and so it refers back to a parcel, but it's referring to the wrong parcel. So they just need to fix, the reference to where the parcel begins, essentially.
Thank you. Any additional comments?
Well, I mean, I would just have the board reference the application there. You can see in there the criteria we have for the issuance of conditional use permits. There are, let's see, 13 criteria that the board should see if it fits those. I will say at a staff level, we felt that this process was good. We had a lot of cooperation from Quick Trip, and so we felt that a variety of these items, for example, number 6, the use is not in conflict with comprehensive plan. I would say, as we go through the public hearing, we would agree that meets the criteria. you know, I don't have any items in particular that we found in addition to ones that were already reviewed and are in your packet tonight, along with what Melanie mentioned as a condition to bring to the attention of the board.
Is there anyone here from Quick Trip?
Right here.
Yeah. Before I open up the public hearing, sir, did you have anything you wanted to share?
Not unless you have any questions.
What was your name, sir?
Nick Newman.
Nick Newman, okay, get that for the record.
With that said, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. If anybody has anything, any thoughts they would like to share on the conditional use permit that Quick Trip is applying for, if you'd be kind enough to come up to the podium and share your name and address before you begin. If not, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Gentlemen, your thoughts?
For the crosswalk area that connects us sort of across the street, is there any lighting that's provided? I'm just thinking about someone crossing that street at night.
Sure. Well, I think you should have the photometric plan in there, and I think there is a substantial amount of ambient lighting.
Okay.
I don't know, Nick, if you could maybe directly answer that?
I guess there would not be a direct street light, but yeah, if you look at the photometric, that lighting that goes kind of outside the main scope of the lighting should lighten that up quite a bit.
I mean, that certainly is a factor if that's something we wanna take a look at, you know, in addition to what we already have there is the ambient lighting. I guess I haven't actually been over there at night, so I couldn't tell you what it looks like in the dark, how dark it is, or what it would look like with this addition of all the extra lighting of the new parking lot, so.
Because I don't think there are that many street lights that are actually over there along that road.
They're further down, aren't they?
Further down.
Yeah, farther down from Quick Trip there are some, but yeah, not right there at that intersection, so that's true. So that certainly is something we could consider.
I will say the purpose of this is not for people to park there and then go to our store. The purpose is more or less to try to free up the congested parking after they fuel up and get food or have to park. If they can, the ideal situation is for them to fill up, get food, do whatever they have to do, and then they can pull out of the lot, you know, either sit till their hours reset or however that works, or they need to take a nap. And then, you know, that would be the ideal situation. Understanding you can't control all that.
Sure.
You know, the principle isn't for people to park there and then cross the road to get to the store. The hope would be that they would use the store, and then we provide a place that would kind of, you know, help with the safety of our regular store, you know, the new store from functioning without so much truck congestion.
Would you say a lot of the, you know, do you see a lot of the trucks in the evening, or is it mostly during the day, or what do you anticipate?
I guess, I don't know that, but I do know that trucks are just taking it upon themselves, I think, to use the property now.
Okay.
So I think that, you know, the people I work with said that, hey, maybe this is a opportunity for us to provide something for our guests in addition to
Sure.
seeing we have the property already.
Okay.
So,
I mean, is it going overboard to consider some sort of crosswalk like we've got up by the school? I'm trying to think of how people get there now, and I will be honest with you, there really isn't a clear path from this side of town to that.
I really don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
I mean, I have never seen anybody crossing that road, even the trucks that do park there now.
Just thinking the gentleman has to use the bathroom, his
Yes.
options are somewhat limited on that side of the road.
I get it, I get it.
I mean, is that something you guys have considered?
well, we would consider it, I guess we didn't put it in the initial plans.
Sure.
But, it's hard to foresee how that, you know, kinda how that would go. And then if the county would allow us to put a crosswalk there or not.
That's true, yeah.
Because it is actually a county highway, not a road, sometimes they have some restrictions on the sidewalk parts of that.
Sure.
If it falls under the purview of the county, I guess I wouldn't mind starting that conversation with the county,
Sure.
or at least bringing it to their attention.
I gotta say, if you're worried about the lighting, I have seen people walking out there at night, and there is a lot of lighting from the lot, like you say. You can see people walking along that road.
Well, and what I didn't take into consider initially is the lights from our existing store, the new store now, 'cause you do get some of that also, even though it is set back there a little bit.
I will just share the comments that, were forwarded on Quick Trip, but also came from Guy at the county. When I notified him, he said that they would be requiring a change of access permit. Nick, have you had any talks with him at all?
I've emailed him twice and called him, he has not been able to get back to me, I don't know if he's out of the office or,
Sure.
whatnot, so I guess I have not talked to him directly.
Yeah, okay. He also added that a pedestrian crossing at a nonstop intersection, Fourth Avenue, was a hazard and would not be permitted by the county. So I don't know if they would allow it further down, but I suspect that it sounds like he's hesitant to do anything where it's a nonstop right there. He's suggesting and saying that, entrances are designed at 45 feet wide, maximum pavement over culvert should be no farther than 32 feet. And then, he thought there's a possibility that a permit from MnDOT would be required for the culvert outlet to the west. So, I'm not sure if that's the case or not, but, and I don't wanna overthink this, you know, we're looking at a demolition of a building and that's in the parking lot. I think that there's, my own view is that a lot of these design criteria, you know, can be resolved without a lot of issues. You know, I think Quick Trip's been very good to work with, and I know that they will be, continue to be. But if there's anything overweening that, for example, lighting, that's something we certainly can take into account for safety of residents and pedestrians and things.
Joe, Sheldon, any comments?
Yeah, I don't have any real issues with the lighting. And I don't think there's gonna be a lot of foot traffic back and forth. I think it's gonna be more like what Nick said. They're gonna come in, do their business and then go back across the street and park.
If there's no more discussion, I would look for a motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use permit per
The items that we discussed tonight.
items discussed.
Yep.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Conditional use permit is passed, sir, thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll forward that on to the city council. It's on the agenda for Wednesday's meeting, and we'll have some items for them. Oh, it's not, okay, so that'll be on the 25th, we'll forward that on the council, so.
Next item, discussion on Thompson addition revision.
Mr. Chair, this is an item that, I know the board has reviewed it, previously. Last year, I know there were a lot of discussions and conversations. We do have a guest here tonight who maybe can reference it too. At the last city council meeting, the city council directed me that, revisions like what Mr. Thompson's looking at should come to the planning commission, before they're finalized. And when I spoke with the city clerk about it, she also noted that we had actually never received a final plat. And to our knowledge, that final plat wasn't yet filed. And so I think, the item that she sent out after the packet went out, would be what we're looking at tonight, which is a sort of a straightforward change from townhomes to, fourplexes and some revisions of sizes with, the creation of what you could term a, sort of an outlot at this time. I think the idea we had here was if the planning commission is all right with those changes, then that would allow the, Mr. Thompson to file that final plat as amended at this, board, and then we would have that instead of having him necessarily have to go through the entire process again. But that is, of course, up to the board and how you feel about it, so. I don't know if you wanted to comment on anything, Mr. Peters.
Oh,
We can go ahead.
please. Yeah.
So
Antonia Thompson, and my address is 504 16th Street in Captain.
And I'm Jamie Judish, 2621 Oak Hills Drive, Southwest Rochester.
So the one thing that I wanted to address was the reason that we don't have the final plat filed is we had a change in what we were looking to do because we would be in direct competition with another builder in town, which is just not a great idea. So we've changed our focus from townhomes to more of a fourplex so that we can look to fill a need for more as affordable as it can get housing.
To be fair, these are still townhomes. We just, instead of being at a 15 to 1800 square foot slab on grade twin home style or townhome, they're just condensed down a little bit because there are plenty of product offerings coming on the market in the 300,000 plus range. There's almost nothing below 250,000 a unit, and that's the niche that we are looking to fill, because we think it's a big niche that needs to be filled. So our hope at this time is that these units would be in that 225 to 250 range, depending on how things come together.
And for my own benefit, this is kind of what the new proposal is. We're going from C1 here to C1A.
That's right. Yeah, and I think,
Oh, I'm sorry, does C1A show the apartment building?
It does, sir. It
Okay,
does.
so that
if
is
you
a
look at the
concept.
first page of that part of the packet, that's really what we're taking a look at tonight, not the second page of that. And I think Linda sent out an update to that too. That was inadvertently included when it was emailed out. Mr. Thompson had emailed out an updated version. So what you'd be looking at is you'd be looking at basically two fourplexes on the west side of the street that's created, and then one to the south of the current property, the home that's there. And then you'd have, like I said, sort of an outlot that would remain open for this time.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, we want to share some of the things that we are considering, but we really don't know what to put on that outlet yet at this time. An apartment building we think is a neat possibility, but if townhomes really go well and prove to be needed, then we want to go that direction as well. So we'd want to bring something in the near future for the outlot, but until we know more about the market and how things are received, we don't have a clear focus yet. Also, in response to a letter that I saw earlier that came from the city, there seemed to be concern about the street and what that would mean. The street would be a private street that would be maintained by the HOA that will be created.
Any questions, gentlemen?
Oh, I really appreciate you coming tonight and you know, it's that transparency that we really want to have, and I think, you know, in the fullest of time, it's gonna be a good use of the property, whatever ends up occurring there. So, certainly, you know, the question we have is does this require just an amendment of the final plat, or does the board feel that they should restart the process?
That's a very good question.
So what we've changed on that drawing, that C.1.0, is we've widened the road and we've lessened each lot to accommodate the smaller sized unit. There's really nothing other than providing that outlot, increasing the road size and the lot size from our original proposal or original proposed plat. We still intend to do 12. That's where we're starting. And 12 was the original number.
And Thompson still planned to live right in the middle of it. Yeah, oh, and that is one of the other changes as well. On these fourplex units, the interior units have the option to be 3-bedroom, which is something that hasn't been done before, that we're aware of anyway, on units of this size, but we think that'll make them far more versatile and marketable. So it can be a lower priced option and actually have 3 bedrooms, so for people that are coming in with kids and things.
drive an issue with you, or no?
Not if it's 24 feet.
Okay.
Gives you a little bit more space now than it did before, didn't
Still no parking on the street?
With it being 24 feet, there can be some room there, but really, the plan is to have parking in the outlot, but we don't know what that looks like yet. But I think you can go back to the one that shows the apartment building as an example. That's an example of how additional surface parking can be put in. But that's a concept as opposed to,
So as of right now, we are approving what it's showing. When he does something with the outlot, he will have to come back in.
Yeah, that would be, you know, if they decide to do, whether it's townhomes, or if they do decide to do another larger project, that would, you know, require a change, you know, we'd have to, you know, either amend it or do an update. Partly because I think the impervious surface would increase, but I know that with all the concerns people have had about water, you would wanna try and figure out what's going on there. You know, it's got such a drop off from the school there
Right.
into the backyard, that would definitely be something we'd wanna talk about. But tonight's consideration is primarily just with the what was sent out, with dealing with the townhomes, because in the fullness of time, you know, as they both mentioned, they're not exactly sure what the design will be, so.
Feasibility and saleability is
Mhm.
kind of our question right now.
So I take it these are gonna be slab on grade,
yes,
2-story?
yes. The only one, the one that's on the east side, that one does have a potential for a basement. That's something we have discussed internally, but it's not, I don't think anything's been drawn for it yet.
Nope.
But we were just thinking about, given the way that the site drops, you know, if a building were to go in on the end, that makes underground parking access really straightforward. And then that might be a neat opportunity for that unit to have a basement underneath it, where now it could be a 5-bedroom or something instead, and just offer more versatility to the site. But that's concept still as opposed to plan. We would plan to start construction on the west units. So the street would go in to support the site, and then the 2 units on the west would be where we would begin, and then see how they are accepted and adopted and go from there.
The preliminary plat was approved a year ago, or when was that approved?
That's my understanding.
Close
Quite a
to,
year
not
ago.
quite quite,
About
but
a month shy of
getting
a
close
month.
to it.
Yeah, I think it was April last year.
Okay.
Are there any other issues at the city council level that needed attention, or something specific, or was it more of a, get a few more eyes on it type of
Right.
mindset? Well, I guess I just don't see anything so severely changed in what they're proposing that requires anything more to be provided, for going through another public hearing or something of that nature. I think what they do with that outlot could potentially trigger some other side.
Yes.
We expect that.
Yep.
But I guess that would be my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I guess from a staff perspective, that was a similar viewpoint that I had too, is just making sure that everybody knows what it looks like though, and that there were some changes so that we can have recommend an amendment, so we can update that and we can actually get it filed. Because once it's filed, then, you know, it makes it a little bit more of a process to change things. So if we're gonna do that, we wanna do it before we have those Mylars printed up and everything like that, so.
So from planning and zoning, do you need anything?
Well, I guess the recommendation to the city council would be to allow us to proceed, you know, as amended with this design, with the caveat that we acknowledge that if something happens with another section of property, that it would trigger possibly another hearing, another full revision, if that's open to the board there.
One other question, is there enough space there for the turnaround for fire truck? It's fine as it is, it's so good, okay. We had a kind of a wider one in the preliminary plat.
And so the road was a lot narrower too.
Sure. Okay.
If there's no additional comments, do you need a motion?
I would love to have a motion,
Okay.
yep.
I guess I would as amended. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You should be all set, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, Wilker conditional use permit.
Yeah, let me take the stage, I appreciate that. This has been discussed repeatedly, at this meeting, and obviously we've had our public hearing already, so, I know Laura's got some items that she wants to run through, she's got some, changes and updates and feedback. In essence, I think part of the reason we're considering tonight is there's a timeline involved, that, we have a certain time period where we want to consider it, and, the planning commission needs to sort of make a choice. And, that's kind of why we're here tonight, make a choice, to potentially authorize it or, not authorize it, and then what sort of conditions would be included in the, the permit if it is authorized. So I think that's kind of where we're here tonight, so with that, Laura, if you want to go ahead.
All right, thank you. So this evening, we are continuing a tabled item from the January 13th Planning Commission meeting, or excuse me, Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow for an existing nursery / landscaping business in the R1 zoning district. Just as a context of where this is located in West Casson, it is adjacent to single-family residential uses to the south and across the county road to the east, with some future single-family residential to the west, and then agricultural uses to the north. The site is currently operating as a landscaping business, which is a non-conforming use. And I believe we're all familiar with the background of this use on the property. The previous conditional use permit that had been going on for the property, which was then revoked in 2019. So just as a refresher, as you saw in the last conditional use permit, conditional use permits may be allowed with appropriate restrictions in accordance with the findings listed there, and considerations that the Planning and Zoning Commission should take when considering a conditional use permit. These are some of them, and there's more on the next slide, of how appropriate the uses are and how they interact with the surrounding area. The 2040 comprehensive plan designates this area as medium density residential for future land use, and the zoning on the property is R1 single family residential. Underneath the R1, gardens and nurseries are conditionally permitted. So since the public hearing and subsequent discussion after the public hearing at the January 13th meeting, the applicant has submitted an updated updated development plan for the site, and that is showing the main building with an expansion, bunkers on the southern portion of the site, a landscape supply area on the northern part of the site, a nursery stock area within the center of the site, and a growing area on the western side. The development plan also shows a sign location, lighting location, as well as indicating perimeter trees. In staff's review of the site plan, it became clear that the site plan did not align exactly with to scale to what exists on the site. And so from staff's perspective, that we're assuming that the applicant wasn't interested in moving the existing buildings or moving the existing bunkers, and so to use the aerial for scaling and other measurements that would be needed for this analysis. As such, we developed a kind of our best guess as far as a combination of existing aerial from 2019 added to then the development plan as submitted by the applicant to get as accurate of measurements as possible. Within your packet, you'll see from the aerial estimated measurements and areas of all of the different existing and proposed. Just some highlights, area B in blue is the proposed expansion of the building with the dimensions that the applicant had indicated on their development plan. That exact location is the best guess from my approximation of the aerial as well as the dimensions given. Part G, area G is kind of the general growing area, and then H is showing those buffer yards and open space. In reviewing this development plan for compliance with the R1 zoning district, the property meets minimum lot size, minimum lot width, front and all yard setbacks for the primary structure. Maximum lot coverage is currently exceeded on the site plan. Because the development plan doesn't give any calculations of hard cover, there's no indication that there's intention to decrease that amount, and so a reduction in hard cover would be required if this conditional use permit were to move forward. And then max building height meets R1 standards. The outdoor storage areas are highlighted in brown on the adapted site plan. Those areas are required to be fully screened from adjacent properties and the public road in an R1 district. And fully screened is can be made up of a combination of fences, walls, hedges, and other berms and other landscaping to achieve that opacity. In addition to the screening of outdoor storage areas, buffer yards are required, and those are highlighted in the red. Buffer yards are to have coniferous plantings at least every 8 feet. There are some existing trees shown on the aerial, and then in addition some trees shown on the development plan. However, neither the aerial nor on the development plan show enough to meet that 8-foot planting requirement. Some other standards that will apply but aren't necessarily issues with the development plan as is. There is an accessory building on site. The accessory building was not part of this application, however, it is accessory to the conditional use, and I believe was built after the existing use started on the site. So we would need to verify that the existing accessory building meets the standards of meets city standards for accessory buildings. If not, those need to be either adapted or removed. Parking and loading. There isn't a parking requirement within, the city ordinance for gardens or nurseries. And there is a provision within the ordinance language, for the city to apply a similar, parking standard as what is, else for other similar uses. Contractor yards are an approved or a use that are allowed within the industrial and, manufacturing districts, and so, applying the industrial manufacturing parking requirement is, parking would need 1 space per employee for maximum shift. From the applicant's information, we don't know the, maximum number of employees on site at a time, and I'm sure that they can provide that information for us, but that would have to be accommodated. Additionally, 1 loading space, would have to be shown on, the parking layout as well. Other standards of, the city code that will apply, but, aren't necessarily a part of what is being shown here. Glare, refuse, and signs will need to continue to comply with city zoning standards. Signs has its own permitting process, and the applicant has shown, lighting, or excuse me, indicated where lighting will be on the building. Because of the setbacks of the building, we're not concerned about needing to have a, foot candle study for those. However, if there is, a change in lighting or a complaint, then that's something that the city might need to look into. So after discussion this evening, there are, 3 different ways that the, Planning and Zoning Commission can take action. Recommend approval. Staff have provided a list of conditions based off of what we have today. If that is the direction that you would recommend going in, recommending denial. If that's the direction, then, you should discuss, findings of fact for denial, and those should reflect the language of the considerations that, all of the conditional use permits are, put against. If you decide to table the request, that would require the applicant to agree to an extension of the 60-day deadline. We have already extended the 60-day, with the city's, by right ability to do so, and so any further extension would require the applicant's permission. And otherwise, the city council needs to take action by March 26th, which is the March 25th city council meeting. So, that's all.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Chamberlain? Thank you.
Thank you.
If you go back to some of the conditions that were originally on the first conditional use permit, the first go around, there was a restriction in terms of additional buildings on the site. That appears to have dropped. And I also believe there is one on there in terms of parking equipment on there, so that appears to have been removed as well.
I can address one of those, as a condition, sorry, let me pull up. Condition 13 in the packet, any deviation on site from what is submitted within the development plan described in condition 1 above, which results in the change or expansion of a location or footprint of buildings, outdoor storage areas, hardcover, parking areas, screening or buffer yards would require an amendment to the comprehensive plan, or excuse me, the conditional use permit. And so that would include any additional buildings or accessory or principal or expansion that would not that would still allow typical maintenance of buildings that are, and we anticipate that the resubmitted development plan as laid out in item 1 would show the building expansion, which is shown on the current development plan.
Tim, in terms of enforcement of some of these conditions, I mean, you're looking at counting trees and other things on here. Does the city have the resources to adequately?
Well, that's a good question, you know, and I'd have to refer to some of their staff, because I would say for us at City Hall, we don't have the resources necessarily through my office. Working with our Public Works Department, some of those could be handled, I'm sure.
Yeah.
My own view on this is obviously that, you know, taking a look at what was filed previously, and I've got some of those questions, you know, at the time when this was originally approved in 2010, you know, Commissioner Borgstrom had brought up, hours of operation and then buffers, and I think buffers in that area is probably one of the biggest factors, and then just the continuing use. You know, I think some of the complaints have been that, you know, there's been maybe more rock storage than there has, trees and that sort of a thing, material storage, and so obviously I think that's, something that the board should take into account. But, you know, just from the top of it, I would say we probably don't have the man-hours allocated to do regular inspections of the property of this nature.
Mr. Chair, there are some factual inaccuracies here. Can we address those, please?
Believe it or not, Councilman, Council, this is not a public hearing, so, I apologize, this would probably not be the best setting to address those factual concerns.
Okay.
Gentlemen, your thoughts on this? I mean, in many ways, you look back at the original conditional use permit that was issued, and some of this strikes me as perhaps a higher level of detail than we went in the first time around. I am glad to see that the building restriction is dropped, because that should hopefully facilitate Mr. Wilker's pursuits out there if I look at the street and try to understand what he's doing. I think the issues about equipment being on the property are addressed and become a non-issue. But we've also got concerns from the city about their ability to enforce a lot of this. And the last time I made the mistake of walking through and just trying to get my head around what was going on out there, I believe the city was sent a letter from Mr. Wilker's attorney indicating if I did that again, there would be a trespassing case brought up. So, in terms of conditions that would perhaps make it a little bit easier without the...
Well, I guess would that be something maybe we could do, is just go through those conditions of approval one by one? You know, I mean, obviously you can read them yourselves, but I
Yeah.
mean, I think what you're talking about, a couple of them, you know, you may say, well, maybe this is not what we're looking for, you know,
Well,
I mean.
I've got my thoughts and opinions on this. I guess I'm trying to select or trying to entice a little bit more than my thoughts to work into this conversation.
I mean, a good example would be number 4.
Sure.
You know, and as I said, I mean, everyone's got their own process. I
Yeah.
just take a look at the actual, like, what does it actually say? Because, you know, I've got, you know, what was provided to us by the applicant, you know, and what the sort of conditions that he's looking for. And, you know, a lot of this is, I think that the difference is really not as substantial as some people might say. I mean, there's probably 3 or 4 sticking points. You know, a good example would be 300 new trees diameter of at least 1 inch, you know, is that a number that we actually need to have that many? Or, you know, I don't really know, but I think that's something you guys should talk about, is it wasn't required, you know, in the previous application. You know, and so, I mean, those are things that, I mean, can we, you know, work this out so that it's possible that we can come to terms on it?
And what was originally proposed was 60% coverage. Me and Dwayne sat at the courthouse, hashing this thing out back and forth with them, and we figured 300 trees over 3 years, that's only 100 trees, and if you spread them out over that lot,
Probably
it really
round up.
isn't that many.
Sure.
It's far less than 60%, way far less. I mean, if he's willing to agree with everything else, I'd be willing to drop that to 150, cut it right in half over 3 years. 50 trees a year that he's gotta keep in there. I don't think that's asking too much.
Sure. No, I mean, and that's a very salient point. Absolutely.
I don't think I am exaggerating when I'm saying that we're trying to make this happen.
From the very
Yeah,
start.
Landscaping business really isn't what's supposed to go into a zoned R1 area. And I've shared my thoughts on the R1 thing. A nursery is allowed.
Yep.
So at least keeping that as a component of this business to keep us within the good graces of the current code, it isn't outrageous. But here's the thing. You know, somebody goes on there to count those trees, and they're gonna get a nasty gram. You're trespassing.
Can I ask the owner a question?
Jason, are you entertaining questions?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
When you do your landscaping, you must sell some trees with the landscaping. If somebody wants to do a project, you arrange to get trees or bushes or shrubs or whatever to do that project, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Would it be out of line for us to require you to have, within 3 years, 150 trees, 50 trees a year, to keep them on site? I'm just asking, because to have a landscape or a nursery, you have to have stock to keep within what you're supposed to do. I'm just trying to, right from the start, I've been trying to work this out with you. And to keep it as a nursery, you have to have stock. And you should be able to sell that stock when you do landscaping. I mean, that's not out of line. If we can somehow, if you would agree to that and allow somebody from the city just to come in and see that, yep, you've got 50 trees here every year, you're in compliance, we're good to go. I mean, if I go to Sargent's, they aren't gonna jump off the wall if I go down there to see how many trees they got, because that's their business as a nursery.
Okay. Now, me to you,
Yep.
now if I walk onto your property, okay? I walk onto your property, your home, okay? You have a sidewalk that's this far off of compliance. I trip, I fall, I sue you.
But-
I sue you, no, you're asking me a question. I sue you.
Yep.
With you not even knowing that I'm there. Not even knowing that I'm there. You're at work, you don't know that I'm there. I trip, I fall, I sue you. You have no idea. You didn't know, I could've tripped on 2 houses down, but I blamed it on you.
Yep.
Now, that's why he was,
But-
had the message.
But
Now,
you're a business.
I get that.
That's completely different than a
I-
residence.
I get that, but if somebody falls on my property still,
Yeah.
they can still sue me.
But if we call you up and say, hey, we're coming out just to check your trees,
That's different.
Yeah.
That is completely different, but that is not what happened.
right, but I mean, moving forward,
Right.
we're talking about moving forward. If you agree to do 150 trees over 3 years, 50 trees a year, we call you up and say, hey, we just wanna come out and count your trees, you'll be okay with that,
I've never had a problem with planting trees.
okay?
I've never had a problem.
Would you be okay planting 150 trees, 50 trees a year, over 3 years? I don't think that's that high a number.
So basically, that's saying that in addition to what I've already got there and what I've already planted there, I have to plant another 150 on top of what I've already planted. I already had one of my employees come to one of the meetings, and it seemed like nobody listened when he said that he had planted himself 300 and some trees.
So they don't get mowed down? Didn't you say that
That was
someone
the
mowed down?
that was the very first set of trees that went in there when I went into that property. I have planted trees, I have planted shrubs throughout the years as to improve my property, but I have let that go in the last 2 years, not knowing what this committee is going to rule. So that's why the adequate buffers are not done. The buffers are in place, there are trees growing there, but you have to allow those trees to get to a certain or to a certain height. You can't just come in and say, I don't have buffers in there. I have planted them. It doesn't mean that you can take a 3-foot tree and say, I don't have any buffers, because that's false. It's false.
But
if I plant 310 trees and she looks at an aerial view and you can't see the 310 trees because they're yay high, that doesn't mean I didn't plant them.
But
And if you called me and said, hey, within the next 7 days, are we able to come out and take a look at your property and say that you have that adequate trees on there, I have no problem with it. Pick up the phone and call me. Sure, let's meet out there. Let's meet out there, let's go through it. So then, you walk through the property and you say, well, there's 6 dead ones, can you replace them? You can't just say, go on my property, oh, there's 24 dead ones, and which ones are dead and which ones aren't to you, I get that, but you can't just walk on my property. And I get the front end of my property, walk on my property, come to my front door. That's what most people do. They come to your front door, they don't just wander.
Okay. I'm just curious if maybe the trees that you're considering barriers or screening is the correct species of tree or barrier.
But you can't tell me how, I can't go out to A&A Electric where you work and tell you that you need to use a 3-phase wire. All you can stock on this thing is a 3-phase wire. You can't stock 2-phase, 10, whatever, it doesn't matter. I can't do that, and nor can you as a city council member. You can't tell me what I'm selling and what I'm not selling.
I'm not trying to tell you as a city council member. I'm trying to tell you as for your conditional use permit, you need to have a specific screening, a species type. You can't just have a maple as a screening, because a maple won't screen anything.
No, I get that, for
Okay.
screening.
Okay.
But you can't tell me what species I can plant and what I can't plant for my 150
Oh,
trees.
absolutely. I get that. I
But that's what
understand,
was-
but I
that's
think
what
we
was
were
going
getting
on.
we were going by size.
And-
That's what we were going by.
And the size thing is another thing too
Yeah,
that I
but
have.
you could plant saplings.
I get it, I get it.
We had to
But
come up
that's not
with a
what-
certain size. If you and us can agree on a size, that's what we'll go with. We're trying to work with you. You
But
know,
a size doesn't work, because I can't come in and plant an 1.5-inch tree and sell it to you, what Sergeant sells it. I can't do that. You can't come up with a size. If you're telling me
what number is okay with you then?
if you're telling me that I can plant saplings, which that's what a bare root stock comes as, is a sapling, that's what nurseries start as. They
Yeah,
start
but-
as saplings. And so when they're 3 foot tall, but that doesn't mean that they're 1 inch in diameter, that doesn't mean that they're 1.5 inches in diameter. They're a bare root tree that comes from the nurseries that we buy them from.
You never buy anything bigger.
I buy bigger stuff to sell to you right from the get-go. That's
Right.
where my stocked area, if she'd back up to a part, one of her, right there, you can see where my nursery
Dark green.
stock is. My nursery stock goes right straight behind my building to the west and has probably at most times anywhere from 50 to 150 trees in it that are all irrigated, that are all watered, that are all bowl and burlap, that I can turn around and sell in a snap. You come to me and say, hey, do you have a maple? Do you have an oak? They're probably in there. We can walk out, we can look at them, and I can sell you that. But I can't turn around and go out back and spade you a tree and at 1.5 inches, if I go out and buy 1.5 inch trees. I can't sell you that same 1.5 inch tree that I just bought for $150, paid my guys to plant out back, then turn around and dig it back up to sell to you. Now I gotta sell it for $250, when Sargent's is selling it for $149. Can't do it. You can't sell that tree for a profit.
Can I say something? I think you're closer than you think here, because.
Oh, I know we are.
These trees that he has here that are all balled up, ready to go, are the stock that you're looking for. Isn't that kind of what you mean when you wanted
To a
50,
point,
50,
yes.
50?
To a
You know,
point,
and
yes.
Here he does have 50 to 100 of them there, and I knew he had all them, but that's kind of the ones that you're gonna sell. That's the stock I think he was trying to get at before.
Right.
And you do, I knew you have a bunch of them, so.
Right. I do have a bunch on it that are irrigated, that are sitting
Yep.
there, they're ready to go.
Yep.
That complies more with the nursery, right, when he's got that?
Yes,
That's what they're.
yes. I mean, if we can come to some kind of agreement, and you can allow, the forester to go out there, walk with you, count how many trees you've got. Okay, from this point forward, you need to keep in compliance, next year, add another 40 trees to that. Add another 40 trees to that. Then the following year, add that last 50 set of trees. As you're selling them, you replace them. So 3, 4, 5 years down the road, you always have the 300 trees, but you're selling them, moving them out because you are a nursery. Yes?
Well, yes, I guess in a way. I mean, those trees are always turning over.
Yes.
Where they,
Yes.
where the nursery stock is.
Yep.
They're always turning over.
Yep.
Well, and the other thing is I'm not in the big city of Rochester, so I don't sell.
No, I get that, but you are a nursery.
Right, I get that.
You have to
But
stay with that nursery.
I
Even if you have 150 trees and 100 shrubs and 50 of this,
right.
you still have that 300 unit. I mean, that's far less, or 150 unit. Let's bring it down to 150, okay? We're cutting it right in half, but we're working with you.
Right.
If you have a variety, I won't even say 2 inch, okay? If you can have some 3/4 inch, and have some shrubs, and have some of this and some of that, but you have, at the end of the day, end of 3 years, you have 150 units of something. You're in compliance. You're good. And if you work on your screens as you're growing, and when we come out to check it, we can see that you're working on your screens, we're golden. Am I wrong?
I mean, I guess I look at it from the perspective of, it works effectively enough for, over 5 years. I think if that's really the sticking point, is how many trees are out there. I mean, if we can get that resolved, I would hope that, we could make it work.
The other thing is too, is go to the next page up there. Keep going. Keep going. Oh, back one. I'm gonna walk up here.
Sure.
This is another thing too, is this lady's never been to my property. She's done an aerial view. okay? This is all planted with trees. This has been there from day one. I have never had a complaint from a single one of these or from one of these homeowners, right? This is screened. It's not a tight screen, but these houses, these first three houses all sit up higher. So they are basically are gonna see over it, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if I have a tree there or not. Well, I want ornamental trees, I want something that's gonna look nice, not be just a choppy thing. These homeowners have never complained. So why do I have to have a full screen in this area, okay? Which I already have trees planted. Same here, I got trees planted there, and I'm just pointing out a few things here. Here is a safety issue to me. Safety, right there. Why? Our law enforcement drives by, somebody decides to break into my building, my lights are on at 10:30 at night, law enforcement, I have them stop at my shop. They stop all the time when I have lights there, just to see if somebody's there. You put a screen here, now they can't see in. Safety. Safety issue.
Well, what if we eliminate that portion of screening?
I'm okay,
Okay.
but I'm just pointing these things out for somebody that's never been to my property.
Right, but I think she was
Point
just.
of clarification, I was highlighting which areas on the property currently have outdoor storage. And outdoor storage requires full screening by your city ordinance. Therefore, either the storage needs to be moved or removed, or it needs to be fully screened, or some other condition needs to happen. I also asked the applicant to provide me with the count of the number of trees that are currently on the site, of the location of those, and the type of trees currently used for screening. They did provide drawing within their development plan of specific trees. It was unclear from that drawing whether or not those were existing or not existing, or proposed, excuse me, and what type of trees they were. And based on the counts as seen within your packet, they do not meet the 8-foot requirement for buffer yards specifically. And it is an important point to clarify, so thank you for bringing it up. These yellow zones do not necessarily mean that there's not fencing or not screening, and the red zones does not necessarily mean there's not currently buffer yards, or is. It's just that's where those elements are required, and that the specifics of those were not given within the applicant's submittal.
The other thing too is this red line travels completely up that whole thing. It's been there from day one, and there is trees and shrubs here, and there are trees and shrubs in this area.
But is it every 8 foot?
There is actually, every 8 foot is an ornamental tree, and in between each ornamental tree is a pine tree. So I put the ornamental trees to give color, and I put the pine trees to add adequate screening. But, you know, and then also on some of these other areas, my bunker area actually goes all back here, so it's never been moved, it's never been touched in 10 years of being there. There's just some inaccuracies. This area back here, it can't be a storage area back there, because that is where my sewage comes out of my building, and there's actually a grinder pump that the city required when I went into that property. So there's no way that that could be a storage area. So, I mean, and in this area is where I got probably at least 50 trees, probably at sometimes 150 trees in there. They're irrigated. But it's just the time of taking the phone call or calling me and walking out with me.
Who is the best person currently within the scope of the city that could go out with Mr. Welker and establish a status?
Well, I think Ron Unger would probably be our best bet, just because he's our, that most experienced arborist, and probably the most experienced there.
But does it need to go beyond trees and look at some other things that we have got on here?
And my other thing too is that my lot size that you guys got put on, whether it was her or it was somebody else, my lot sizes were 360 by 507. It's technically 507 by 410. So if actually my property is, I've been overpaying on my taxes if my property was put at that.
The additional 50 feet goes into the right-of-way of the county road, and the aerial and measurements that I took were from the parcel lines provided on Dodge County's website, as that was the best available information. If the applicant wants to include the 50-foot right-of-way of the county road, that would also have impact on the hardcover count that the site already exceeds.
Mr. Chair, do we have any other
What are-
feedback from the other members of the planning commission?
What is a hard cover, to be honest with you on this, because of,
Hard surface.
if we add the 50 feet that I have out front, that seems to be, that's all grass. That seems to be a pretty good buffer zone right there that is maintained constantly. It's maintained and mowed every week out there. So, I'm not saying that I'm not at 60% of my property is trees and shrubs, but I do maintain that all the way across the main road. And it is grass, it is maintained, it's kept up, it's fertilized, whatever I have to do to keep my property looking, good or fairly decent, to the eye going by. I have easements in there, yes, that run across that whole front area, and there actually is an easement that runs down the south side of my property, all the way down. That is maintained and mowed and trimmed. So,
I think our biggest concern is the screening, the number of trees, and that addition to the building.
and if I'm putting the addition on in the building, in the first place where I wanted to put a building in, obviously, it's not to just clutter it up with whatever, it's to actually get my equipment to kill two birds with one stone. To get my equipment inside, where it's not getting, sun, whatever, beating on it, weather, whatever, it's inside.
Can we arrange to have Ronnie go out and count trees and count the screening? And that way we have a number that we can sit with Jason and say, this is what you need to do over the next 3 years to stay in compliance, to increase your screening, to increase your stock.
That would be the recommendation I would make. There's gotta be some baseline status.
Yeah,
where we
because
could
we're not, I mean, we don't know what he's got out there. Yes, he could say he's got this and that, and I'm trying to work with him. I mean, we've dropped from 60% to 300 trees, and now we're talking 150 trees.
Right.
So we are trying, but he also has to try too, to stay in compliance.
I would identify a number, identify a concept you're comfortable with. That there's gotta be some sort of baseline, this is where we are today. I think we gotta identify some sort of enforcement mechanism, some sort of high level.
Well, I mean, you guys
way to
set
manage it.
the target, and we'll try to establish a baseline, and, whether we approve it today or not, or forward recommendation, whatever we do, I mean, we have to keep an eye on it, and, hopefully that means that, we can work with them before it becomes a problem.
Well, you know, one of the conditions floating around in the back of my head, and it's a thought, it's not a complete idea, is there some condition we need to build in here to facilitate the city's ability to,
Adding an access requirement or, you know, something like that.
Enforcement.
you know, understand, I'm not the guy doing the enforcement, so
You're not?
understanding. What? Understanding that a little bit would help.
Are we going the right direction?
I believe that this is something that could, the issues that I have highlighted in, as far as the site plan and not having complete information regarding the landscaping and screening, or excuse me, the buffer yards and screening, that's information that can become available very easily. It is a matter of the applicant supplying that information to the city. And I don't see that as being an impediment to actual approval. I think that all of this is within the realm of can happen. As far as the number of stock, you know, personally, those, item 4 had been, was an item that had been, discussed by the city council for, with the pending litigation, and, all of the other items are related to specific, not use-specific items, but other standard specific items within your zoning ordinance. And so that's what I wanted to make sure was reflected within the conditions that we put forward.
Right, because I don't want to stray from what we require now and set a precedence. I want to stay within what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I want Jason to understand that if we have Ronnie go out there, count trees in the screening, the buffers, maybe he will have to move the stock in front of his business so he isn't required to have a screening there. That way it's just the building showing.
Mhm.
You understand what I'm getting at? Okay, if he is over the percentage of hard cover, have Ronnie talk to him about what he needs to do to green up some of the space, so he isn't over that. And so he can talk to Ronnie to agree that this is what he needs to add to achieve his 8-foot spacing for the screening. If we meet on all those points and everything comes back and it's agreed upon, we should be able to reach some outcome. Correct?
Well, I think, I mean, I don't know really, I mean, why we wouldn't.
I don't either. Can we set up something, maybe have a list of things that we want Ronnie to check? He can get a hold of you, set up a meeting, so he can go out there with you and step this off. Let's work this out.
I have no problem with Ronnie coming out.
Awesome.
No problem.
Would like to ask ultimately to have Mr. Unger come in here and present his
Oh,
findings or put
absolutely.
together a report.
I would, suspect, I don't know, what is our date for this, 60 days?
Yes, so, the 60-day extension as it currently expires March 26th. So
Can
that'd
we
be right
extend that?
after the.
Well, with his permission, we can extend it. I also would say, you know, we could schedule a special meeting if that's something the planning commission would like to do, and see if Ron can get out there in the next 3 weeks and give us back at, you know, a time like that. I mean, that would, we'd have to have that meeting before the 25th, which would be the council meeting this month, but, you know, it's up to however the board feels that they wanna proceed. You know, they can also request that time extension too, if they feel like we're getting close and we just need a week or two more.
Can we just extend it 30 days? Would you have a problem with that?
So we would need the applicant's, permission in writing to make any extension beyond March 25th for the final action.
Can you do that? we're trying to work here.
I know.
I'm trying
just-
hard.
I'm just trying to figure out if you wanna have the meeting on the 25th, or if you wanna do a special meeting. I'm just, or if that's,
Well, I
because if
think
we
if-
go a 30-day,
Yeah, I
we're
mean,
gonna
that-
have to have a special meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if we can get a 30-day extension, that gives us the 25th or the 8th of April for council to give approval.
Right.
So, I mean, in that, I would say that, you know, we would try, I mean, the planning commission will probably have to have a special meeting. So that's probably, you know, we're gonna probably have to do that, and that's fine. But I mean, if we can get 30 days, that'll allow us to have a special meeting, planning commission can review what Ron has to say, and then that can either go to council on the 25th or the 8th of April.
Can Ron work with you?
Mhm.
Okay.
I will agree to the 30-day. And have Ron contact me.
Okay.
Don't just go to my property.
No, he's
Go
not
for
going
it.
to.
We're not gonna
I
do
know,
that.
I'm
He's not
just
going to.
saying.
No, I
But
got you.
you're
No, and
willing
we
to do
really
that
do
in
wanna
writing.
try and resolve this,
Yes.
I think the whole board does. So yeah, that's, I think if that's the way the board feels, then that's what we'll do is, Laura, if you can get the paperwork
Yep.
for Mr. Wilker,
Mhm.
we can, I'll talk to Ron tomorrow, and, as soon as it's, you know, good enough to go out there and you're comfortable with it, you know, we'll have Ron give you a call and pick a date. And when he's ready, after he's met with Mr. Wilker, then we can set up a special meeting for planning commission, and then either bring it on the 25th or to the, is that all right, Mr. Chair, or?
By all means,
Okay.
I hope we just haven't ambushed Mr. Unger.
Oh,
We've just
I'm
got
sure he'll
to
be
throw
fine,
him.
I'm sure he'll be fine, he enjoys this sort of thing, you know.
Okay.
Come on, it'll be fine. Anyways, well, I mean, he doesn't, you know, he works for the city, so we wanna try to get it resolved, so.
Understood.
Has any, I guess I wanted to see if anybody else had any feedback too, because I.
Yeah, I'm done. No.
I think I've shared my thoughts in the
Sure.
entirety. Gentlemen, do you have anything you'd like to throw in?
Well, we talk about adding 50 trees a year, but I don't like, how many trees do you sell a year? And if you planted 50 trees, are you gonna, I mean, I don't want him to plant a whole bunch of trees on his property and then
Be stuck with them.
basically be stuck with them and have them go to waste, you know? So I mean, if you plant a sapling,
But,
I mean, can you?
like I said, if.
Can you dig that up in 3-4 years and be able to, and be
Probably.
able to sell it?
It's probably, to be honest with you, if you plant a sapling, it's probably 5 to 8 years before that thing is,
Before you can dig it up to sell it like the ones that you've got already balled up?
yes. But, you know, on a normal year, you know, on a normal year, I probably sell 50 to 80 trees, I don't know, somewhere in there,
Yeah.
I don't know. It varies. There's years that I might sell 200 trees,
Yeah.
but that's just, I mean, yeah, I sell plants and shrubs, but most of them I buy, because it's just easier.
Yeah. No, I know your property, I know the buffers that you have, personally, I think they're fine. I know throughout the meetings that we've had, you've had several individuals in here speaking on your behalf, including, neighbors of the property, you know, so I don't personally have issues with those. My big issue is, one, making sure that we're not requiring that you plant trees that you're ultimately not gonna be able to use. Cause ultimately, as a nursery, is what we're looking to define you as. I think as a city, we ultimately need to make sure that you're able to use one of the things that we're requiring you to do. Secondly, my probably biggest concern is being able to follow up with you, on an annual basis to make sure that you're complying with the conditions that you set and we set and this board sets and the council approves, to make sure that we're doing what we all said we were gonna do.
Which I don't have a problem with, because obviously in 10 years we've had an issue, obviously, of
Yeah.
maybe some of my conditions got out of whack, but when you
Well, and
don't-
to that point as well, like, if we go a year and we set a condition and all of a sudden, a year later, business has changed or the environment has changed and we need to adapt that, then we can address it then and it's not an issue to where we are today.
Right, and, you know, when you go 10 years, 11 years, with not a single person coming out without a single complaint, I shouldn't say without a single complaint, we've had our complaint, but that individual has never been to a meeting that's been about me.
Sure.
I
Right, I mean, it's
so-
on us to do probably a better job of policing that, and making sure we're checking with you on a more regular basis. I think, I certainly recognize that from the city's perspective, because we don't wanna have this situation come again.
Right.
Obviously, and you don't either.
No. I mean, and it's probably not just me. I mean, it's obviously other businesses, and I'm not trying to get other businesses in trouble. I'm just saying that when you get out of whack and you don't know that you're out of even whack, that it's a little easier to control it when it's, you know, nipped right away.
Sure.
Well, and when it's conditions that you're agreeing to instead of someone else for you.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't have anything else, not at this time.
Thank you for the time. I get it.
Mr. Torkelson?
I don't have anything else.
Sure. I don't have anything to add.
I believe I need a motion, gentlemen. I think we're all in the same mindset. Somebody would like to articulate it gracefully.
I suck at that.
That was not a motion, this is a request.
Well, I think the motion is to, get the extension.
Yep.
From the applicant, to ask Mr. Unger to go out and to meet with him at a time that they both agree on, to go through the property and see if he can find the best ground in terms of how we wanna settle it. And then to have him come back to a meeting of the planning commission, in that window that we're gonna have, and, report back to us so that we can set the firm terms that seem agreeable to the board, and then hopefully recommend, to the council.
And if we need to schedule a special meeting to that end, I'm more than happy to make myself available.
Sure.
I've got 2 travel dates. So do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
We have a
Second.
motion. Do we have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Wonderful. Few working the stronger, see if we can't put together some sort of timely
Absolutely.
response to this whole thing.
Yeah, sounds good.
And so far, you can keep everybody railroad.
Well, thankfully, we've got a nice early spring, so hopefully it should be pretty visible out there and walkable and stuff. So hopefully no snow in the next 30 days here, so.
You think you know something we don't know?
Cross my fingers here, you know, right now the 2-week looks pretty good.
Before everybody scatters, is there any other business we need to discuss tonight, Tom? Tim, do you have anything?
I don't have anything, just to have Laura talk to Mr. Wilker and make sure we get the paperwork to him so that we can
Yes.
move forward there.
Yep, I will follow up with the extension letter for you to sign, and then, the list for the city arborist.
That's right.
I will make that available to you as well, beforehand, so you know what he'll be looking for.
One other thing I had, we had talked a little bit last month just about moving forward on our zone revisions. And so at our April meeting, if, that's acceptable, Laura, we probably would start taking a look at that so we can start to kinda, I know we personally have sort of set a deadline of getting all that information out to the, especially developers, so that any of these changes would take effect in January. So that kinda, it's already gonna be April, we kinda have to start that, chunking that out so we can get all the information out. So just something to expect, and if you forward some of those things out to us, we'll get them out to the, maybe forward it on to Linda.
Yep.
So that she can get it out to the board, so they can start taking a look.
All right, will do.
Thank you.
Anything else? We'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
Together, but before this all came, you know, they would find, and you heard me up there
Oh,
one
yeah.
time say it, you had a lot better trees than the others.
See, well, my coworkers, they like wait for me to take a couple days off work, and when I get back, oh, here